Welcome to the Food Startups Podcast, connecting the opaque world of food startups.
Hey guys, welcome to our 50th episode. This is quite a milestone for me and for the show, I think, because there's a lot of times where it was tough to keep going, putting out one every week, which we've started to do finally this year. It's not easy. There's a lot that goes into finding the guests and making the shows ourselves. And we have a really great episode today, another company profile that I hope connects with some people and teaches them on how to be a successful B2C brand. The last week was all B2B. I'm really excited about the company that we have today, I Heart Quinoa. Their theme is accessibility, not just in making an ingredient like quinoa accessible, and an easy to go snack, but from the price point, from their name, it's very inviting. I love how transparent Ravi was, and he told me about, the ups and downs and how they got to where they are today. To me, it's not by accident. Obviously, they had some luck along the way, but you have to kind of position yourself to take advantage of that luck. And they've definitely done that. Well, I wanted to give you a couple more pieces of news before we go into the interview. One is some people have reached out to me via Twitter or the contact forum, but I'd like to hear from more of you guys. Don't be shy. I've built a decent network now via the podcast and all the work that I do outside of it to pay the bills. And I'd love to hear from you and hear what type of projects you're working on. Maybe I can put you in touch with the right person, or maybe I've passed a place that you're going soon. So, a couple people have done that with me already, and I'd like to hear from more of you guys. So don't be shy and go to foodstartupspodcast.com, click on the contact form, and tell me what you're working on. The second piece of news is next week, we will have the long-awaited nutrition episode. And not just nutrition from someone who's kind of unbiased. It's really what he does to have a healthier life. A lot of people I contacted before were interested, but they seem to have an agenda to sell their supplements, et cetera, et cetera. This person has a very, very extremely healthy diet and taught me a lot about nutrition. And not only that, but he's also written a book on how to change habits. So a lot of times they'll hear, okay, great. Yeah, we know we shouldn't eat refined sugar, but how do you change? How do you change your habits to have a healthier diet and healthier life? Well, he'll be on next week, and I'm looking forward to that episode as well. Today, we have a great company that we'll be profiling. And as I mentioned, it's all about accessibility. Their name, I Heart Quinoa. Accessible, it's inviting, it's a growing snack company. So I'm going to bring in our guest now for episode number 50. We have Ravi Jolly today from I Heart Quinoa. I like the name. I like the phonetic spelling, right? Because you're trying to introduce a new superfood to the U.S. market. Now, Ravi, take us through the whole experience. Walk us through the naming process and continue on to the concept and your full-time company.
Yeah, sure. So I Heart Quinoa is kind of my brainchild. I'm one of the co-founders, and there's a second co-founder, my partner, Sarah. And about 5 years ago, quinoa was like this esoteric health food item that only a certain demographic in the United States had heard of, right? It wasn't mainstream the way it is now. And so I was always interested in quinoa. My wife happens to be a vegetarian, one of these crunchy granola people who eats spelt and quinoa and chia. So I had been introduced to it a while ago, but I had never seen it really popularized. And so when we went to kind of launch a food venture, because that's all something that I wanted to do, we looked at quinoa, and we looked to the fact that quinoa was sort of seen as this inaccessible item to folks. Again, either they had not heard of it, or they had heard of it and they didn't really know how to incorporate in their diet. And I guess the third bucket, which was definitely overlapping with the others, but they didn't even know how to pronounce it, which is why kind of the name came into being, where we decided that we would pronounce it, we would spell it phonetically. So I Heart Quinoa. And really, it's kind of a hook to draw people in, based on the fact that people see it as being this inaccessible thing. When they read it, and when they read it in their mind, I Heart Quinoa, and they see it spelled phonetically, some people, they kind of chuckle at it. Most people kind of, they get drawn in, and it kind of becomes our shtick at bringing people into the world of quinoa.
Right on. So you started this, 4 to 5 years ago? And did you go full-time? What were you doing before you started I Heart Quinoa? And was this a full-time leap, or did you gradually make your way to have a full-time gig with I Heart Quinoa?
Yeah, no, this wasn't full-time, actually. When we started, it was part-time. I was working a corporate job, worked in finance, and I Heart Quinoa was kind of a thing that we did in nights and weekends. I was living in New York at the time, and luckily in New York, there was kind of a renaissance of all these like small artisanal food markets. So we had an opportunity to kind of prototype the item and sell it in a very low pressure environment and in an artisanal market. So that's what we did. We sold it at this market in Brooklyn, and every week we'd come, I'd work Monday through Friday, and then I'd kind of take off the suit and put on the apron. We'd make batches all through the night. We'd make them in the morning, and then 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, we'd be at the market and we'd be selling. And I thought it was a good way to launch a business. I think it gives you confidence that you have proof of concept when people actually buy something. I mean, we could give the product to friends and family and to mom and dad, and of course they're going to tell you it's great, but you don't really have anything until someone actually opens their wallet and buys it, right? Then you actually have a product. You've created a product that people actually want. So I think doing it in that fashion may not be the right way for everyone, but for us it was the best way because we were able to kind of tinker with the product, to interact with people, to see what was important to people and what was not. And yeah, through that year we definitely tweaked the formulation a number of times just based on feedback until we reached a point where we thought we had something good. We wanted to take the business to the next level, and we invested in more professional packaging and launched it into kind of grocery stores.
And so that day or that night when you said, all right, that's it, we're going full time, were you scared, excited? How did you feel?
Yeah, no, I was definitely scared, for sure. I think it's definitely daunting to quit a corporate job and to jump into something that, I always joke that basically this is a glorified lemonade stand. There's nothing that's separating, my adult self than from my child self selling lemonade on the side of the street. Other than that, we have a fancy packaging. So it is daunting. I don't know, but it's also exhilarating. It's an environment where the sky's the limit. And once things start to get going, they kind of just snowball. We were probably in the market for about 2 to 3 months when Oprah's Magazine decided to write up about us, which was amazing. I don't know how we landed that. It was basically by luck. I happened to be selling at a local market in New York, and Oprah's Magazine staff is headquartered in New York. And so one of the writers was at the market just on the weekend just because she wanted to, go to this local market, and somehow we got connected. And then next thing I know, we're featured in the magazine. But it really took us to the next level.
Great. So really cool story. And we're going to get into this later with PR and how it's helped your business. But I want to talk about the sky's the limit. And I think that's perfect, the ingredient of quinoa, right? Because it's subject to extremely high demand. I know there's been situations. I know Peru has had problems with the crop in the past. There is a reality that the supply may not always be there, or it could become astronomically expensive. I want to know, how far down the supply chain do you work, and do you guys have any planning in place for something like that?
Yeah, no, watching quinoa for the last few years has been interesting. You saw it go from being this niche item to exploding, becoming super mainstream. It was named by the United Nations, year of quinoa. All these companies started focusing on quinoa. It was all through the press. So there definitely was, we found ourselves in a situation probably 2 to 3 years ago where there was more demand than supply, and that made the price go through the roof. I think, though, since then, you've seen a lot of supply come on board, right? It's just supply-demand economics, where these farmers or these people in South America who had not been interested in quinoa farming now suddenly converted plots of land that may have been devoted to other crops or may have just idle. Now they're planting quinoa. I had the benefit of going down to Bolivia probably about 5 years ago in the beginning of the company, and then I went back just a few months ago on a sourcing trip, and just to see the difference in development in the farming communities and the difference in, I guess, people's views towards quinoa, and I guess quinoa's prevalence in sort of the farming areas. It was definitely remarkable. And you can see the investment. You can see that over the past 2 to 3 years, the farmers have done well, very well. The government has done well, and they have invested in the farming communities because, just to your point, they're trying to pave the way for the future of more stable supply. And I'm just talking about Bolivia, which is sort of Bolivia and Peru are the two top producers of quinoa. Outside of those countries, a lot of other South American countries, Ecuador, Colombia, have also increased their quinoa production and should be real players in the coming years. Even in North America, we've started growing it in Colorado, and there's been a small plot in Oregon. And then in Canada, there's two growing areas, both in eastern and western Canada, that are growing quinoa. And this is just in North America. I mean, I've read articles about quinoa coming in China, quinoa in Australia. So I think what you're going to see happen is that there's going to be more supply. It's going to be more sustainable in the sense that it'll be coming from different parts of the world. So we're not all going back to the same source, which is Bolivia and Peru. I think the Bolivians would like to see their quinoa be the most premium quinoa because it is kind of the most unadulterated seed. It's royal quinoa. It's a large seed. It has all sorts of superior health qualities. Sort of the same way that if you were shopping for sparkling wine, you couldn't call champagne from outside of the Champagne region of France champagne, right? And so you pay up for this premium origin-focused variety, and then you have commoditized product out there. I think you'll see the same with quinoa. You'll have royal quinoa from Bolivia, and you'll have everything else from outside of Bolivia.
Right on. And isn't there some type of controversy with the patenting of the seeds? I'm curious if you know anything about that, like patenting the seeds, like patents with the seeds, and then also, has it growing well in North America? Is the soil right, and are the conditions right for growing it in North America?
Yeah, the patented seed I really don't know much about, to be honest. But the second question about growing in America, it grows a little bit better in Canada. I think their growing conditions are a little bit more similar to what it is in South America. I mean, with quinoa, so quinoa ironically thrives in very harsh conditions, and almost like it does best in very harsh conditions. So you have to find an area that has, basically it's a high desert. And with the high desert, you have not a lot of water, you have high altitude, you don't have a lot of pests, you don't have a lot of fungus. And so in that sense, you don't have to necessarily worry about spraying pesticides or fungicides or herbicides. And so this lends itself really well to high altitude geographies like Bolivia and Peru and northern Canada in particular.
Gotcha. Now, Ravi, so you're full-time with this project. Is there anything that keeps you up at night where you wake up, I don't know, like at 2 a.m. and check your phone or add to Asana or whatever to-do list, something that really worries you as you're growing this amazing company?
I mean, I think it's more of just quinoa has become so popular so fast, and I think that it has a lot of staying properties as being, I think it really has the chance of changing the way that people eat and the way that people view food and protein and plant-based protein. It's versatile. It takes on a lot of flavors. I mean, we're making snacks. You could make savory dishes. You could cook it. You could crisp it. You could mill it into flour. So many uses. You know, I'm definitely a huge fan, but I do wonder and I do fear that a portion of the people who are consuming quinoa now are consuming it, I guess, just because it's popular. And will those people still be in Camp Quinoa in the years to come? And so will we see kind of people move on to the next big superfood? I guess that kind of keeps me up at night. I sure hope that's not the case. You know, I guess that's when something is trendy, that's always the downside to it being trendy, is that people who just got into it because it was trendy move on to something else. I think that it has staying power for a number of reasons, but I'd be lying to you if I said that I don't have that concern.
Great. No, I really appreciate the honesty there. And the Dr. Oz crowd doesn't usually stick around, right? And so how do you keep people interested even when there's the UN names another superfood the year of X superfood, right? Very cool. Now, listeners, I'm going to link to this on the website, but they were just Scion, the car brand, had I guess it's like a entrepreneur, it's called the Motivate Tour. And they brought on Ravi's partner, Sarah, and it has the founder of Kickstarter, you know, these really top entrepreneurs, and they kind of make their pitch. And you can watch it. I won't tell you what happens, but go ahead and watch it. But for PR and marketing, where do you guys spend your money, if you spend money at all? And what have been your most successful marketing channels? And if you could tell us one or two things that haven't worked so great, we'd also be interested in knowing that.
Yeah, I mean, PR marketing is definitely important. I think in the early stage of the company, I think we didn't really focus on it. We basically, we reached out to bloggers and we would get a lot of inbound inquiries from bloggers. But as far as big PR goes, whatever magazine wrote us up was basically just luck. We happened to be, again, being in New York and being at markets on the weekends, you meet people, and we got a few good hits just from doing that. The majority of our budget has been spent to sampling. Our product is still so new, it's still so innovative, and we're taking quinoa and we're making it ready to eat, we're making it snackable, and we're trying to make it as tasty as we can, right? So it is quite an ambitious undertaking, and not everyone is willing to part with a couple of dollars of their food expenditure to try your product. Some of them need to sample it for free, and so that's really what we focus on. And we go to a lot of consumer events that focus on vegetarian diet. We do the green festivals, do vegan festivals, we do gluten-free festivals. I'm now starting to do some more gym-oriented events to get kind of the more performance-oriented crowds. Any event where I can get in front of people and they can try the product, because I'm convinced that we have something so unique and that it's tasty, and that you turn the package around and you see the nutritionals and it's compelling enough that once people try it, they'll be turned on to it. But it's really just standing out from the crowd and getting people to try it that initial time.
So before we get to what hasn't worked, looking at your price point, how would you describe how much money do they make a year, male, female, age range? Who is the I Heart Quinoa customer right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we have some data on this. Our target market tends to be an individual. It skews more towards female, who's in her, I guess, late 20s to late 40s. She is either aware of what quinoa is and wants to find more ways to incorporate in her diet, and finds our product to be really unique because now we've given her another occasion to eat quinoa, or she's sort of more health aspirational and she wants to be making better eating decisions for herself, but at the end of the day, she wants to make sure it tastes good and that the package will tell her that it's healthy for her. So we kind of go after both groups, kind of the more health, crunchy granola health enthusiast, as well as the health aspirational, the person who just wants a good tasting, healthy snack. As far as economics go, I don't really know if we have that sort of data. I don't really know if it matters. I think that both demographics, they have a desire to invest in their health. Our product is on the premium end in terms of snacks, but it's not, we're not talking like $10 a bag. We're talking like $3 to $4 a bag. So it is within reach. That was something that we really tried hard to do when we came up with the format and the packaging and the manufacturing. It's like we want to create something that makes quinoa accessible. Well, part of that is making sure the price point's accessible so that we can reach everyone. Everyone who wants to eat healthy should be able to buy our product. That's
great. Yeah, no, because cold pressed juices, right? I do like them, but in DC, they can be between $10 and $12, right? That's really expensive. That's cool that you're at a point where a lot of people can buy their product if they want it. Tell us something that hasn't worked so great in your marketing.
Oh, right. I think ads, just like straight up ads, whether in magazines, we've done some banners online. It's just really hard to convert those people into trial users. It's hard to take them from sitting in front of their computer and seeing an ad to actually going into the store and buying a sample of our product. I think maybe if we were a bigger brand, or if there were a number of brands that had this sort of product and we were trying to differentiate our brand versus other brands, maybe that would make sense. But right now we're still, we're telling consumers a story about our product, and then we're reminding them that they should trust our brand as being the Quinoa Products brand. I think it's just because we're still kind of in the early stages. So again, it comes back more to sampling of the product itself than advertisement of our logo.
Gotcha. Now, Ravi, we talked a little bit before the interview, but as you guys grow, you can't continue to cook in your kitchen. And so you went on to work with a co-packer. How hard was it to find your first co-packer? And are you still with the same co-packer you started with?
Yeah, no, finding a co-packer is hard because it's hard to kind of know what you want, I think. You don't know where the business is going to evolve. You don't know where your role is going to evolve because, again, if you're at the point where you're finding a co-packer, you're usually probably spending most of your time making the product yourself, and then the remaining part of the time you're working on the business. Here you're at a crossroads where you're going to give away that huge part of making the product yourself to someone else. It's kind of hard to let that go and to actually know what you want. We networked basically with folks in the industry to find our co-packer. It wasn't the first phone call, it was probably the 20th phone call. One person recommended us a so-and-so, and they couldn't do it, but they heard of another co-packer, and that co-packer heard of another co-packer, and somehow we landed ourselves a very small co-packer, which was, the size was good for us because we were making a difficult product, difficult in the sense that it hadn't been done before and that we're going to need flexibility to tweak the formulation. And as such, we knew we didn't want to be making huge production runs at a time. It had to be kind of slow, small batches. Let's launch it, get some feedback, maybe tweak, more iterative. And that was the type of co-packer that met our needs. Were they the most inexpensive co-packer? Probably not. Were they the most, experienced or established co-packer? No. But again, it's about sort of where you are in your business and where you want to take it. That was for the clusters. For the puffs, it was different because we launched the puffs, which is our second product line, earlier this year. Now we've been in the industry for like 3 years, and we kind of knew a little bit more what we're doing, and we didn't go to a smaller manufacturer. We went to a larger one where we do large runs. We kind of knew the type of product, the look and feel, the texture that we wanted, and it's been kind of an opposite experience. But again, it just goes to show, depends on where you are in your business. But with our original co-packer, we actually still do work with them. We've moved on to a second co-packer, and at certain points in the year, they do more volume than the original one. But we do still stay loyal to the original co-packer, and we keep them around for more regional business.
That's great. I guess on Now Defunct project, I remember like going to a really big one that works for Wrigley's and, really big companies. And the famous line from someone who's starting out, listen, I know our volumes aren't big now, but if you take a chance on us, we plan on growing at a really high rate. And they'll always, like the co-packers really tell you, like, yeah, we've heard that we kind of hear that all the time. It's not really what motivates a co-packer. So it seems like you did a great job navigating that space. Now, moving on, the final question I have for you today, Ravi, is you added the puffs this year, but how do you test and add new flavors and products to your line? Is there any mathematical process behind that? Do you go with intuition? How do you figure out which flavors and products to add?
Yeah, I think a lot of it starts with intuition. We're the ones who are living and breathing quinoa. We are seeing what trends are out there in the market, and we're definitely listening to feedback. That's sort of the benefit of being a small company, and I'm the owner, and I'm out there doing demos all the time, and I'm listening to people tell me what kind of product they want to see in the market. So I sort of internalize that information, and when we go to do another product, like with the puffs, the feedback there was that people wanted something that was sugar-free, that was savory, and that was light and airy. So one day I was standing probably in a Whole Foods doing a demo, and I saw a cheese puff sitting on the other side, and was like, hey, well, we should look into making a cheese puff except made with quinoa as the star ingredient. So that's where it came about. But once we get a prototype, we do try to get the product in a number of people's hands. And sometimes it's quantitative, but most of the time it's not as quantitative. It's more about letting, in the early stages it was friends and family. Now our friends and family are in a lot of cases are investors or people, veterans in the industry. And so they're still friends and family, but they're a little bit more qualified to say if something will probably do well in the market or not. But it's very much the same process of just getting the product in their hand, hearing their feedback, and iterating.
That's interesting because I always wondered that, because I guess a few different approaches. Some people will say, and maybe it depends on the industry that you're in, right? I don't think there's a one size fits all answer, but on one side, right, you can go with the expert, someone that's, like you said, a veteran in the industry. Or you can say, all right, no, but I prefer the quantitative, where I would rather have 500 quote unquote average Joes and see what they say. That means a lot more than the opinion of one expert. But cool. Well, listen, Ravi, for our listeners, where can we find you guys online?
You can find us on Amazon.com, Abe's Market, and we have our own website, which is iheartquinoa.com. There's a web store on the website.
Great. And guys, it's iHeart, like IHEART, quinoa, KEENWAH.com. Well, great. Ravi, thanks so much. You did a great job, and I think you gave a lot of value to our listeners.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, guys. Thanks so much for listening. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, find us online at foodstartupspodcast.com.